The galactic laughingstock. The galaxy was vast, filled with countless civilizations, each competing for dominance. Among them, humanity was nothing more than an afterthought, a young, fragile species confined to a single planet. To the mighty Xilari Empire, humanity was a joke. The Xilari were one of the oldest and most powerful races in the galaxy. Their warships were massive, their technology centuries ahead of most species, and their rule was absolute. They had conquered dozens of worlds, wiping out any who resisted. When they looked at Earth, they didn't see a threat. They saw amusement. Across Xilari space, entertainment channels broadcasted footage of humans struggling, clips of early space missions, astronauts fumbling in zero gravity, and old videos of rockets exploding during tests were played over and over again. The alien commentators laughed at how primitive humans were, how slow their progress had been compared to other species. They still used chemical propulsion, one Xilari host sneered during a popular broadcast. Like cave dwellers playing with fire. Laughter echoed through the grand halls of Xilari entertainment networks. The idea of humans ever standing against the Empire was ridiculous. Even the smaller, weaker alien species had more advanced fleets than Earth. Some Xilari nobles even placed bets on how long it would take for humanity to surrender if war ever came. The estimates ranged from a week to a month. None believed humans could last longer. One by one, alien races who once feared the Xilari joined in on the mockery. It was safer to laugh at humans than to challenge the Empire. But while the galaxy laughed, humanity listened. Deep beneath the surface of Earth, inside a hidden military facility, General Elias Carter sat before a massive screen. It displayed hundreds of alien broadcasts, each one mocking his people. He watched in silence, his fingers tightening into a fist. The Xilari thought humanity was weak. They thought Earth had nothing to offer but entertainment. They had no idea what was coming. For decades, Earth had been preparing. The leaders of humanity knew the truth. War was inevitable. The Xilari would eventually come, either to conquer or to wipe them out. So instead of wasting time trying to impress the galaxy, humanity had chosen a different path. They had chosen secrecy. While the Xilari laughed, Earth's greatest minds worked in silence. They developed technology beyond what any alien empire could imagine. They studied the weaknesses of enemy fleets, built weapons that could strike without warning, and most importantly, created something no one had ever seen before. True invisibility in space, a fleet of warships, completely undetectable. Now, the moment was approaching. The Xilari had grown too confident, too arrogant. Their fleet was gathering near the borders of the solar system. Their commanders were already celebrating an easy victory. They didn't realize they were walking into a trap. General Carter stood and turned to his officers. His voice was calm, but there was a dangerous edge to it. The Xilari think we're weak, he said. Let's show them just how wrong they are. The order was given. The galaxy had been laughing at humanity for too long. It was time to silence them. The challenge. The Xilari Empire did not send messengers. They did not send warnings. They did not believe in diplomacy. Instead, they sent their war fleets. The largest of these fleets, the Crimson Dominion, was now approaching the solar system. It was led by Grand Commander Vosk, a seasoned Xilari warrior who had crushed over 30 civilizations in his lifetime. To him, Earth was nothing more than another weak species to be conquered. Vosk stood on the bridge of his massive warship, the Tyrant's Gaze, watching as his fleet moved effortlessly through space. Thousands of sleek, black warships stretched out before him, their hulls shimmering under distant starlight. He was not worried. "This will be over in days," one of his officers scoffed. "Perhaps even hours." Vosk smirked. "Humanity will beg before the end of the week." The officers around him laughed. It was the same everywhere they went. Weak species always thought they could resist. They always had hope, right until the first wave of Xilari ships turned their cities into ash. But this time, something was different. As the fleet advanced, Vosk expected to receive desperate transmissions from Earth, pleas for mercy, offers of surrender. Instead, there was nothing. Only silence. A trap in the darkness. The lack of response should have been a warning, but Vosk dismissed it. He saw it as fear. Humanity was too afraid to even speak. But deep within the shadows of space, something watched. The auxiliary fleet didn't know it, but they were not alone. A silent predator lurked just beyond their sensors, unseen, unheard, waiting. Aboard HFY Phantom, the lead ship of Earth's hidden fleet, Captain Sarah Connors studied the enemy formation. Through the reinforced glass of the bridge, she saw nothing but an endless expanse of black. The enemy was out there, but her ship's cloaking technology rendered them undetectable. A small smile tugged at the corner of her lips. "They have no idea," she muttered. Her crew was tense but ready. They had spent years training for this moment, perfecting the art of invisibility in war. The auxiliary thought they were the hunters. But tonight, they were the prey. The first strike. Grand Commander Vosk leaned back in his command chair. "Begin the invasion. Target their defenses first. After that, I want their cities reduced to rubble." His officers nodded, relaying the orders across the fleet. Weapons powered up. Cannons locked onto targets. The fleet prepared to fire. Then, without warning, one of the auxiliary warships vanished. Not exploded, not destroyed, just gone. No alarm, no distress signal, no explosion. One moment it was there, and the next, nothing. The bridge fell silent. Vosk frowned. "Where is the Bloodfang?" he demanded, referring to the missing ship. His officers scrambled to check sensors, but there was nothing. No wreckage, no energy readings. It was as if the ship had been erased from existence. Then, another ship disappeared, and another. Panic began to spread. Something was out there, something they couldn't see. Vosk's eyes narrowed. All ships, engage defensive maneuvers, find the enemy. But there was no enemy to find. Then, in the darkness of space, something stirred. A single message appeared on every auxiliary monitor. 3 chilling words. "Now it's our turn." And then, the real attack began. A ghost in space. The auxiliary fleet had never known fear. They had crushed hundreds of worlds without resistance. They were predators. Unstoppable, invincible. Until now. Grand Commander Vosk stood frozen on the bridge of Tyrant's Gaze, his sharp eyes scanning the fleet's tactical display. Ships were vanishing. Not exploding. Not broadcasting distress signals. Just disappearing. No wreckage, no enemy signals. No warnings. Nothing. The bridge crew whispered among themselves, their voices tight with unease. The auxiliary were not used to confusion. They were used to swift, brutal conquest. "This is impossible," one officer muttered, his claws tapping against the control panel. "No fleet can do this." Vosk's grip tightened on the armrest of his throne-like chair. He refused to believe in ghosts. "Impossible or not," he growled, "something is out there. Find it." The auxiliary sensors, the most advanced in the known galaxy, swept the area. Scanners pulsed, searching for anything. Heat signatures, energy trails, gravitational anomalies. Nothing. Then another ship disappeared. And another. The Phantom strikes. Aboard HFY Phantom, Captain Sarah Connors watched the enemy fleet writhe in confusion. "They still don't know where we are," her weapons officer whispered. "Good," Connors said. Her voice was calm, controlled. "Let's keep it that way." Earth had never intended to fight the auxiliary on their terms. Humanity had no giant warships, no sprawling galactic empire, but they had patience, they had intelligence, and they had stealth. They had turned their weakness into a weapon. One by one, the cloaked human warships drifted through the auxiliary fleet, unseen, unheard. They moved like shadows, targeting key ships, eliminating them before anyone even knew they were there. A silent war was being fought in the void, a war the Xilari didn't even know had begun. Panic in the Empire. The Xilari fleet was in chaos. Switch to blind firing. One officer screamed, "Shoot in all directions." Vosk clenched his jaw as the fleet opened fire into empty space. Beams of plasma and missiles shot out in every direction, but they hit nothing. It was like fighting the wind. A transmission came through from a distant warship, a frantic, desperate voice. "We're not alone out here. We see." The transmission cut off. The warship vanished from the screen. Vosk slammed his fist against his command chair. "I want answers. I want." A new message appeared on his monitor. A human voice. Calm. Cold. The hunted has become the hunter. For the first time in his life, Grand Commander Vosk felt something unfamiliar slither through his chest. Fear. The revelation. The Xilari Empire had never known fear. Until now. Grand Commander Vosk sat frozen on the bridge of Tyrant's Gaze, his mind racing. This was not war. This was slaughter. But it was not the kind the Xilari were used to. They were the ones being hunted. Another ship disappeared from the fleet. No explosion. No distress signal. Just gone. The Xilari officers on the bridge trembled. Their voices wavered as they tried to make sense of what was happening. "Unknown force is targeting us, Commander," one of them stammered. "No enemy detected," another shouted. "Our sensors show nothing." It was impossible. The Xilari had the most advanced detection technology in the galaxy. Nothing should be able to hide from them. Yet, something was out there. Something they couldn't see. And it was tearing them apart. Then, for the first time, humanity revealed itself. A shadow in the void. A ripple passed through space. At first, it was subtle, like a mirage shifting in the heat. But then, before the stunned eyes of the Xilari fleet, something massive began to take shape. Phantom decloaked. It was unlike any warship the Xilari had ever seen. Its black hull swallowed the light around it, like a void in space. Its structure was sleek, predatory, designed for one thing: stealth warfare. The Xilari officers gasped. What is that?" One whispered. Vosk's claws dug into his chair. "A human warship," he growled. His voice no longer carried its usual arrogance. The Phantom floated in silence, alone against thousands of Xilari warships. And yet, in that moment, the Xilari felt outnumbered. A transmission crackled through the Xilari fleet. A human voice, calm and cold, spoke 3 chilling words. "Now it's our turn." And then the slaughter truly began. The power of ghosts. The Phantom's weapons powered up. It was a terrifying sight, not because it had enormous cannons, but because the Xilari hadn't even realized it was armed. Its weapon systems had been completely invisible to their scanners. The ship fired. A streak of blue light cut through space. The first Xilari warship erupted in flames, torn apart before it could even raise its shields. More human ships decloaked. 1, then 3, then an entire fleet of black warships emerging from the darkness. They had been among the Xilari this entire time, watching, waiting, and now they struck. Xilari warships fired wildly, trying to hit anything. But the human ships were faster, smarter. They weaved through enemy fire like ghosts, striking only when they had the perfect shot. One by one, the Xilari fleet was dismantled. Vosk watched in horror as his warships, his invincible armada, were reduced to floating wreckage. The monster in the dark. This isn't possible," one officer whispered, his eyes locked onto the burning battlefield. Vosk clenched his fists. "They tricked us," he muttered. "They let us think they were weak." He turned to his crew, his voice rising. "They wanted us to mock them, to underestimate them." Realization struck him like a hammer. Humanity had never been weak. They had been hiding. A cold shiver ran through him. They hadn't just built weapons. They had built an entirely new way to wage war, a way no empire had ever seen before. For the first time in his long career, Grand Commander Vosk did something he never thought he would do. He considered retreat. The Empire's nightmare. Grand Commander Vosk had fought countless wars. He had seen planets burn, watched civilizations crumble under auxiliary rule. But never, not once, had he felt this. Helplessness. The auxiliary fleet was crumbling, its once mighty warships falling one by one, not to a larger force, not to superior numbers, but to ghosts. Humanity's ships moved in ways that defied all logic. They were shadows in the void, striking with terrifying precision before vanishing into darkness. Every time auxiliary warship turned its guns to fire, the target was already gone. The hunted had become the hunters. Vosk's claws dug into the arms of his command chair. His officers were panicked, screaming reports he no longer had the time to process. Tyrant's fist is gone. We lost contact with the Black Claw. No response from 3rd Assault Wing. Every second, another warship vanished from his display. Vosk slammed a fist against the console. Enough. Order all ships to regroup and fire on my mark. But his officers hesitated. One of them turned, voice trembling. Commander, regroup where? Vosk's stomach twisted. Because for the first time in auxiliary history, there was no front line, no enemy formation to break, no weakness to exploit. The humans were everywhere. And yet he still had one last card to play, the desperate counterattack. Aboard the Tyrant's gaze, a war council was forming. Vosk's best tacticians, weapons experts, and strategists gathered, their faces grim. Their advantage is stealth, one officer said. If we can strip it away. Vosk raised a hand, silencing him. We don't have time for theories. We need action. He turned to his weapons chief. Prepare the Nova Pulse. The bridge fell silent. Commander, the chief hesitated. That weapon was never tested at full range. It cooled. I didn't ask for doubts, Vosk snapped. I asked for results. The Nova Pulse was the auxiliary's ultimate failsafe, a ship-destroying energy wave capable of disrupting cloaking technology. If it worked, it would expose every hidden human warship in the sector. If it failed, well, failure wasn't an option. Vosk watched as the final sequence activated. A deep hum vibrated through the Tyrant's gaze as the ship's core redirected all its energy to the weapon. A countdown began. 5, 4, 3. Then, in a flash of white light, the Nova Pulse erupted. A blinding shockwave expanded in all directions, stretching across the battlefield, consuming everything in its path. For the first time, humanity's greatest weapon, invisibility, was gone. The ghosts were now exposed, and the auxiliary were ready to strike. Humanity's next move. Aboard ASS Phantom, alarms blared. Captain Sarah Connors blinked as the cloaking field around her ship flickered, then collapsed. They were visible. Every human warship was. Her second-in-command turned to her, eyes wide. Captain, the enemy fleet. I see it. Connors watched the auxiliary warships realign, their weapons locking onto her ships. She had to act fast. Full power to evasive maneuvers, she ordered. Deploy countermeasures. Now. A wave of energy flares and decoy signals spread out from the human fleet, scrambling enemy targeting systems. But it wouldn't last long. The auxiliary had adapted. A deep voice crackled over the communication line. Grand Commander Vosk. Humans, he sneered. You fight well, for primitives. But this battle is over. Surrender, and I may let some of you live. Captain Connors exhaled, shaking her head. They always think it's over, she muttered. She pressed a button on her console. A transmission was sent. Vosk frowned. His display flickered, then changed. He wasn't looking at the battlefield anymore. He was looking at Earth. And what he saw made his blood run cold. Humanity had only revealed part of its strength. Because while the Xelari had been focusing on the fleet, something had been preparing behind the scenes. On the surface of Earth, the true war was about to begin. The true war begins. Grand Commander Vosk stared at the transmission on his screen, his mandibles twitching in disbelief. The humans weren't panicking. They weren't retreating. They were waiting. And now he understood why. The image on his monitor was not of their fleet. It was Earth. But something was wrong. Vosk leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. The planet should have been defenseless, its surface littered with weak, primitive cities. But what he saw instead made his blood run cold. The humans had lied. Across Earth's surface, massive structures began to rise. Asterisk fortresses, orbital cannons, launch silos. Asterisk dozens of hidden military bases, now revealing themselves as their camouflaged coverings collapsed. Then came the ships. From deep within the oceans, from underground bunkers, and from darkened lunar bases, a second fleet emerged. Not stealth ships, warships. Bigger, deadlier, built for a final war. Vosk realized the horrifying truth. The human fleet they had been fighting was just the distraction. The final ambush. Aboard SS Phantom, Captain Sarah Connors watched the terror spread across the Xelari fleet. "They're starting to understand," she said calmly. Her second-in-command grinned. "They thought we showed them everything. They had no idea." Humanity had spent decades preparing for this moment. The first wave, the Phantom Fleet, was never meant to win outright. It was meant to lure the Xelari into a false sense of dominance, to make them laugh, to make them underestimate. And when the Xelari fleet finally thought they had the upper hand, the second wave would emerge. The real war would begin. The Xelari's worst nightmare. "Commander, orders." The voice of one of his officers pulled Vosk back to reality. His mighty fleet, the Crimson Dominion, was in shambles. His warships were exposed, their formations shattered by the humans' first attack. And now there were even more human ships appearing. He had one choice: fight and die, or run. Vosk clenched his jaw. The Xelari Empire did not retreat. He turned to his bridge crew, his voice like steel. "All remaining warships, focus fire on their capital ships. If they want a war, we will give them one." Across the battlefield, the surviving Xelari ships regrouped and struck back. Laser barrages, plasma cannons, and missile storms filled space as the Xelari launched everything they had at the human fleet. But it was too late. Humanity wasn't just attacking. They were ending this war. The wrath of Earth. The second wave of human warships fired. They didn't fight like the Xelari. They didn't fight like any race Vosk had ever encountered. The Xelari fought with brute force, overwhelming their enemies with sheer numbers and power. Humanity fought with precision, with patience, with absolute control. Every human shot found its target. Every missile struck a weakness. Every Xelari maneuver was predicted before it even happened. Vosk's fleet was not just being defeated, it was being dismantled. One by one, his warships fell. One by one, his warriors died. Until only the tyrant's gaze remained. Vosk stood on the bridge, staring at the ruins of his once great armada. Everything he had built, everything he had fought for, gone. A transmission came through. Captain Sarah Connors appeared on his screen, calm, unshaken. "This is over, Vosk," she said. "Your empire thought we were weak. That was your first mistake." Vosk clenched his fists. "And the second?" He growled. Connor's eyes narrowed. "You gave us time to prepare." Then the final shot was fired. The tyrant's gaze exploded, and with it, the last remnants of Xelari pride. The aftermath of arrogance. Silence. The battlefield, once filled with the deafening roars of war, now drifted in eerie stillness. The wreckage of the once mighty Xelari fleet floated lifelessly, twisted metal and shattered hulls scattered across space. Fires flickered in the void, consuming the last remnants of an empire's arrogance. Humanity had not just won. They had made a statement. Aboard HS Phantom, Captain Sarah Connors exhaled, watching the flames of Xilari warships die out. The Xilari, proud conquerors of 1,000 worlds, had been humbled in a single battle. Her second-in-command leaned forward. "Incoming transmission from the Xilari homeworld," he said. Connors smirked. "They finally want to talk." She turned to the holoscreen as the image of Xilari High Chancellor Xervos appeared. His reptilian features were twisted with rage, but beneath the fury, Connors could see something else. Fear. The terms of defeat. "You?" Xervos hissed, his voice barely controlled. "You dare do this to us? To the Xilari Empire?" Connors raised an eyebrow. "Do what?" she asked innocently. "Defend ourselves." Xervos' claws curled into a fist. "We will not forget this. We will rebuild. We will." "No." Connors' voice was sharp, cutting through his threats like a blade. "You won't." The Chancellor's eyes narrowed. "What do you mean?" Connors leaned forward. "The Xilari Empire is over," she said coldly. "You thought we were weak. You thought you could conquer us like every other species you've crushed under your boot. You thought we were beneath you." She gestured toward the battlefield, where the remains of the Xilari fleet still burned. "Look around, Chancellor. Who's beneath who now?" Xervos bared his teeth, but his silence spoke louder than any words. "We could wipe you out right now," Connors continued. "We could send our fleet straight to your homeworld and turn it into dust. But we won't." Xervos flinched. "We're not like you," she said. "We don't conquer. We don't enslave. We warn." She leaned even closer, her voice like ice. "And this was your only warning." Xervos inhaled sharply. His arrogance, his pride, shattered. He had no choice. The Xilari surrendered. A galaxy changed forever. The news of the Xilari's defeat spread like wildfire. Across the galaxy, alien empires who once saw humanity as insignificant began to reconsider. Fear, respect, caution. No longer were humans a joke. No longer were they the weak ones. The message was clear. Earth was not to be trifled with. And in the darkness, in the farthest reaches of space, new eyes turned toward humanity. Some in admiration, some in fear, and some in hunger. Because if humanity could defeat the Xilari, then perhaps, just perhaps, they were worth fighting after all.